boy who lived. Harry Potter's story begins with a curse that should have killed him, cast by Voldemort on Halloween night when Harry was only a year old, a spell that instead rebounded and left him alive with nothing more than a lightning bolt scar while making him instantly, if invisibly, famous across the wizarding world. Compared to the celebration his survival triggers among wizards, the life he actually leads afterward looks nothing like that of a hero, since he is handed over to his aunt and uncle, Petunia and Vernon Dursley, who resent his existence and raise him accordingly, forcing him to sleep in a cupboard under the stairs and keeping him deliberately ignorant of both magic and his parents' deaths. His cousin Dudley is spoiled while Harry is treated as an inconvenience to be tolerated rather than a child to be cared for. And for 10 years, nobody bothers to tell him that an entire hidden world already regards him as the boy who survived what no one else ever had. That gap between public legend and private neglect is the foundation the rest of the story builds on, and it means Harry enters the wizarding world with no inflated sense of his own importance, shaped instead by the ordinary experience of being unwanted, which becomes part of why fame never fully sits comfortably with him, even once he understands what it means. Where many stories about a chosen hero begin with some sign of destiny visible even in childhood, Harry's childhood offers nothing of the sort. Only years of being told, in ways large and small, that he does not matter. New world. Everything changes when Hagrid arrives at the Dursleys' door on Harry's 11th birthday, delivering a Hogwarts acceptance letter the family had been intercepting and finally telling Harry the truth about how his parents died and why his name means something to strangers. Diagon Alley introduces him properly to the wizarding world, and his wand, chosen by the wand rather than the other way around, turns out to share a magical core with Voldemort's own wand, an early detail that quietly foreshadows how tangled their fates already are. Compared to nearly every other student sorted that year, Harry's placement is genuinely contested, since the sorting hat seriously considers Slytherin, sensing traits inherited unknowingly from Voldemort himself, before Harry's own preference, and pleading push it toward Gryffindor instead. That single moment of choice, made by an 11-year-old who barely understands the stakes, becomes one of the most thematically important scenes in the entire series, since Dumbledore later tells him directly that it is our choices, far more than our abilities, that show who we truly are. Compared to the fame and destiny already assigned to him by the wizarding world before he ever set foot in it, this is the first time the story insists Harry actually decides something about himself, and the friendships he forms almost immediately afterward, with Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, become the closest thing to family he has ever had. First, battles. Harry's earliest years at Hogwarts repeatedly pull him into direct contact with whatever remains of Voldemort's influence, starting with Professor Quirrell, who is secretly sharing his body with Voldemort while hunting the Sorcerer's Stone. A plot Harry disrupts partly because his mother's old protective magic makes Quirrell's touch unbearable to sustain. The following year, Chamber of Secrets casts suspicion directly onto Harry himself, since his ability to speak Parseltongue, a trait he shares with Voldemort without understanding why, convinces much of the school he must be the mysterious heir of Slytherin responsible for a series of attacks. Compared to the easy trust extended to characters like Hermione or Ron, Harry spends this year isolated by classmates who assume the worst based on abilities he never chose to have, a pattern that becomes familiar throughout his time at school. He ultimately proves himself not through pedigree or reputation, but through action, descending into the chamber itself to fight a basilisk and rescue Ginny Weasley, aided at the critical moment by Dumbledore's Phoenix. Compared to the suspicion cast on him at the year's start, that rescue re-establishes the pattern the series returns to again and again. Harry is repeatedly linked to Voldemort by traits and circumstance, yet consistently separated from him by the choices he actually makes. By the end of Prisoner of Azkaban, that pattern extends even further when Harry learns his own father figure, Sirius Black, was wrongly imprisoned for over a decade. Adding another layer of injustice, Harry finds himself uniquely positioned to correct. Turning point. Goblet of Fire marks the moment the story stops functioning as a school adventure and becomes something closer to a war, beginning when Harry is mysteriously entered into the Triwizard Tournament, a competition intended only for older, hand-picked students. The tournament's final task turns into an ambush, ending with Cedric Diggory murdered in front of Harry inside a graveyard where Voldemort, using Harry's own blood, completes a ritual to rebuild his body and return to full power. Compared to every earlier brush with danger, this is the first time Harry directly witnesses a killing, rather than narrowly surviving one himself, and he returns to Hogwarts carrying both a body and undeniable proof that Voldemort has come back. That proof is immediately dismissed by the Ministry of Magic and the Wizarding Press, who prefer denial to confronting a returned dark wizard, leaving Harry publicly branded as either delusional or attention-seeking despite having told the exact truth. Compared to the relatively contained dangers of his first 3 years, Cedric's death introduces a guilt that never fully leaves Harry afterward, and it quietly reframes everything that follows as a story about surviving a war rather than simply passing another school year. Isolation. Order of the Phoenix presents Harry at his most isolated, publicly dismissed as unstable by a ministry unwilling to admit Voldemort has returned, while Dolores Umbridge is installed at Hogwarts specifically to suppress any preparation for the fight actually coming. Harry responds by secretly organizing Dumbledore's army, teaching fellow students real defensive magic despite the risk of expulsion, while also beginning to experience disturbing shared visions and emotions through his scar, a psychic connection to Voldemort neither of them fully understands yet. Compared to the support he received from Dumbledore in earlier years, this is also the year Dumbledore deliberately keeps his distance, a choice made to protect Harry that instead leaves him feeling abandoned exactly when he most needs guidance. That combination, public disbelief, secret responsibility, and unexplained psychic intrusion makes Harry increasingly volatile, prone to anger he doesn't fully recognize as partly Voldemort's own bleeding through the connection. Compared to the confident, if reckless, boy of earlier books, the Harry of this year is someone genuinely struggling under a weight most adults around him refuse to even acknowledge exists, let alone help him carry. Losing Sirius. Voldemort exploits the very connection Harry cannot control, planting a false vision of Sirius Black being tortured at the Department of Mysteries specifically to lure Harry into a trap. Harry leads his friends there believing they are rescuing his godfather, only to find the vision was fabricated, and in the ensuing battle among towering shelves of prophecy orbs, Sirius is killed by his own cousin, Bellatrix Lestrange, falling through a mysterious stone archway called the Veil. Compared to every loss Harry has processed at a distance until now, Sirius's death is immediate and irreversible, removing the closest thing to a parent Harry has had since infancy, and it happens as a direct consequence of Harry's own susceptibility to manipulation through his scar. Dumbledore finally reveals the prophecy afterward, explaining that either Harry or Voldemort must eventually kill the other, information withheld for years specifically to spare Harry this exact kind of pain, a decision that backfires completely. Compared to the anger Harry already carried throughout the year, this loss hardens it into something closer to grim resolve, and the softer, more hopeful version of Harry from earlier books effectively ends here. The Horcrux. Half-Blood Prince shifts the story's focus toward understanding Voldemort himself, as Dumbledore spends much of the year showing Harry memories of Tom Riddle's childhood and rise to power, building toward the theory that Voldemort has split his soul into multiple Horcruxes to avoid death entirely. That year ends with Dumbledore's death atop the astronomy tower, killed by Snape under Dumbledore's own prior instruction, leaving Harry, Ron, and Hermione to abandon their final year of school entirely and hunt the remaining Horcruxes alone. Compared to every danger Harry has faced with adult guidance close at hand, Deathly Hallows strips that safety net away almost completely, forcing the trio to survive largely on their own judgment while hunted across the country. The hardest revelation comes through Snape's memories, delivered just before the final battle. Harry himself is unknowingly a Horcrux, a fragment of Voldemort's soul lodged inside him since infancy, meaning Voldemort cannot be permanently destroyed while Harry remains alive. Compared to every previous fight, which Harry could survive and walk away from, this reframes his entire remaining role in the war. Victory requires his death, not his survival, and he has to decide what to do with that knowledge alone. Final choice. Rather than telling anyone what he has learned, Harry walks into the Forbidden Forest to let Voldemort kill him, accepting death as necessary to destroy the piece of Voldemort's soul living inside his own body. The Killing Curse connects, and Harry experiences a strange in-between vision at a version of King's Cross Station, where Dumbledore's spirit or memory explains the full truth. The Horcrux is destroyed, but because Harry chose this willingly, exactly as his mother once did protecting him as an infant, he is given the choice to return to his body rather than move on. Compared to the passive way his survival was framed as a baby, this second survival is deliberate, an active choice built on everything he has learned about sacrifice across 7 years. Back in the forest, alive but presumed dead, Harry ultimately faces Voldemort one final time, and the Elder Wand, which Voldemort believes he controls, turns against him because its true allegiance was won by Harry rather than by force. Compared to the entire war that came before it, The final duel resolves less through raw power than through the same argument the series has made from the beginning. That choice and sacrifice, not survival instinct or strength, are what ultimately decide the outcome.